The Audio-Technica CKM1000 is a flagship dynamic driver earphone from Audio-Technica that has almost no reviews of it on the internet. And when a product has no reviews and it's a flagship product, you just gotta know what's going on. So you're watching Lachlan Likes a Thing, and we're about to find out. Hey everyone, welcome to Lachlan Likes a Thing, the show where I take a thing and see whether or not I like it. Another thing we're looking at in this video is the Audio-Technica CKM1000, which, as I mentioned before, is a flagship dynamic driver earphone from Audio-Technica. Now, this earphone has actually been on the market for quite some time now. It was released in 2012 along with a 50th anniversary edition of this earphone, which was the CKW1000, which had a wood and titanium housing. I believe this earphone is mostly titanium and plastic. Now, I've actually owned this earphone for quite some time as well, because I've been watching the street price for this earphone drop from the original, $599 recommended retail price. It dropped all the way down to about something like $250 on Amazon Japan. And I was really curious about this earphone because, as I mentioned before, there's virtually no reviews about this earphone on the internet. Now, as a flagship earphone, this earphone has quite a number of things going for it. So it's got that titanium housing. It's also got the permandular magnets in it. So what it has, instead of the kind of usual cobalt materials they use as the magnetic element in the driver, it uses a stronger magnetic element called permandular, which I haven't actually heard of until now. Now, it's debatable whether that makes a difference or not, but permandular magnets should technically allow for a higher magnetic flux capacity on the earphone, Teslas and everything like that. I don't even know any of this stuff. But anyway, I was really curious because there's virtually no reviews about this product, and since it's released, it's basically been quietly, I believe, replaced with the CKR10, but I figure now is as good a time as any to make a review about them. Now let's start with the earpieces of the CKM1000 because they're probably the nicest part of the whole earphone. Now, the earpieces are made of titanium, as I mentioned before, and titanium is a metal with a very high strength to weight ratio, which is one of the reasons why they use it in bone implants, and Audio-Technica likes to use it in a lot of their fancier headphones. Now, the CKM1000 has a titanium body, and then this part is made of plastic, and this part is also made of plastic. I believe that the CKW1000 is pretty much the same. It has black titanium housing. Now, the back part of it is wood instead of this plastic part, but I believe the front part is still plastic. Now, the titanium, as you can see, gives the earphone this really interesting feel to it. They're very, very lightweight. They're oddly lightweight in a way, given their quite large size. They make an interesting noise when they clink together. It's a really interesting material, and the shape of the earphone, as you can see, is this kind of half earbud, half in-ear design. It's a very complex shape. I think it's actually quite beautiful, but it is a bit of a strange looking earphone. Now, as we go down the actual cable on the earphone, we go up to the Y split, and then this is another thing that's very, it speaks to Audio-Technica's kind of audiophile heritage. They've chosen to use a dual-stranded cable along the entire length, and the reasoning behind that, I've had it explained to me, is that by kind of keeping the cable separate the whole length of the cable, they're trying to improve audio quality. It's kind of debatable whether that makes a difference or not, but that's one of those things that people will pay for. Now, Audio-Technica kind of ruins things in a way, because once you get far enough down the cable, you get to this adapter here. And I gotta say, I really do not like this because it is both really chunky. The adapter actually doesn't sit flush with the jack, as you can see. So I just think it looks really clumsy. It looks like an aftermarket adapter rather than something that came with the product. It's very strange. Again, this speaks to something of the Japanese domestic market, because a lot of their audio players have the inline remotes that you might plug this into. Though I would have thought that if you were a kind of discerning audiophile, you wouldn't use those kind of remotes, but who am I to judge? Anyway, we get with a dual-stranded cable all the way down. This is actually quite a long cable, which is another kind of unique feature of this earphone. We get to this 90-degree angle plug.
And I gotta say, even though this is a chunky plug, this is one of the nicest plugs that I've ever encountered on an earphone. It's just, nicely made, absolutely brilliant strain relief. This is also one of my favorite parts of this earphone.
Now in terms of comfort, the CKM1000 is a half in-ear, half earbud design, so it must be worn with the cable hanging down. And because the cable is so long and it's not particularly supple and you have this big chunky adapter, it tends to move around a lot while you're using it, and it produces a lot of cable noise. It's actually very, very distracting. So this is one of those earphones that you have to just kind of sit down and use instead of moving around with it. In terms of actual comfort, because the earpieces are quite light and it's got a conventional design, it's actually quite comfortable. It's got that going for it. But again, this is kind of more from Audio-Technica's old school book of making cables, which are slightly impractical on their earphones. And now we get to the sound of the CKM1000. Now, before I bought the CKM1000, I asked a friend of mine who owns the CKM1000 what it sounded like, and she described it to me as the sound of screaming into a metal bucket. And now that I own the CKM1000 and I've heard it, I have been putting off this review, and I almost didn't do this review because of how accurate that description is. Now, let me start by saying this. I really love Audio-Technica. As an audio company, I believe they have a really kind of almost artisanal approach to how they tune their headphones. So instead of going for absolute neutrality, they tend to tune things more in this old school philosophy of trying to capture an impression of sound. So Audio-Technica's house sound very frequently kind of emphasizes the vocal range, particularly female vocals, in a way that's very vivid and very lively. And this is true of most of their high-end headphones, whether it's like portable headphones like the ES10 or their entry-level full-size headphones like the ATH-CKM1000 or their flagship Woody headphones. Each of those headphones sounds different, but they have each a kind of unique rendition of vocals. Now the CKM1000 also has a very unique rendition of vocals, but unfortunately the unique rendition is like screaming into a metal bucket. The earphone has extremely forward, aggressive vocals. They sound splashy and aggressive. On some instruments at low volumes, acoustic tracks, that kind of thing, it sounds really nice, like with string instruments, with female vocals. That emphasis is really kind of breathtaking and vivid. But on a lot of other tracks, most other tracks, it actually sounds really harsh. This is especially even compared with the Sony EX1000, which is kind of the CKM1000's dynamic driver counterpart, because Sony and Audio-Technica are big rivals, at least in the Japanese domestic market. The CKM1000 is harsher than the EX1000, which is telling you a lot because that's one of the main complaints about the EX1000. The CKM1000 is so harsh that even a well-mastered album like the Daft Punk's Random Access Memories, which everyone agreed was a really well-mastered album, ends up sounding a bit tinny and a bit sibilant on the CKM1000. So that gives you an idea of the kind of signature we're talking about. Now, I don't think that the tuning of the CKM1000 was a mistake. It's definitely got a sound which is kind of take no prisoners approach to Audio-Technica's house sound. So it's in terms of everything else, in terms of the signature, it's a lovely earphone. The bass is very, very controlled. It's very well extended. It's really quite beautiful. There's a scoop in the mid-range, so particularly with male vocals, so that you end up getting that emphasis on the female vocals. But even if everything else about this earphone has really lovely texture and it's got a nice sense of pacing and soundstage and everything like that, the treble absolutely dominates the signature. And this is one of the few earphones, along with Audio-Technica's CKM70, where I couldn't actually stand listening to this earphone for longer than a few minutes. It's just that kind of extreme signature. Now, in some of the comments I've read about the CKM1000, apparently it sounds quite similar to the CKM99 and the CKM500. And that's what made me kind of curious about the CKM1000 because those other two earphones have a bit of a cult following on HeadFi. But now that I've given this a listen, I have to say I've never been kind of more put off by an Audio-Technica earphone product. Now, maybe you might like it. Some people kind of really like this lively signature. Maybe if all you listened was if all you listened to was acoustic music at low volumes, the CKM1000 would sound kind of beautiful to you. Maybe you have high frequency hearing damage, so that the CKM1000 would sound more like a kind of takeout curry as opposed to a Seichun hot pot. You know, it's maybe less spicy depending on how sensitive you are to various frequencies. I don't know. All I can say is that I find the CKM1000 nearly unbearable. Now, that said, the CKM1000 has a street price of about $180 now on Amazon Japan, so it's kind of an interesting option if you're looking to buy something flagship and exotic without breaking the bank. And if you really are still curious about this earphone even after watching this review, head on over to my Facebook page because I will be putting up these headphones for sale after I finish this review, and I'll put that money towards getting the new Audio-Technica CKR10, which is I think the earphone that's meant to replace the CKM1000. I've heard it briefly and I quite enjoyed the sound, so I'm looking forward to trying that. As far as the CKM1000 goes, as a flagship earphone, I think this is a flagship that's probably best left under the sea. Anyway, click the like button if you found this video enjoyable. You can talk to me on Facebook at facebook.com/LachlanLikesAthing or on Twitter at LachLikesAthing. Thanks to all my regular subscribers and happy listening.